All right, Coach. Good afternoon. Welcome. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing good. We were just talking a little bit off air. It's good to finally meet each other. I think we've been social media friends for quite a while, so it's fun. And I was telling you, it's fun for me to kind of put obviously there's faces to names, but now put conversations and things of that nature to names too. So thank you for coming on and being flexible and with the time with the summertime. So.
I appreciate you having me. It's exciting.
Yeah. So first question I always ask everybody, talk to me about how the offensive line played a role on some of the better teams that you've been a part of.
Well, I think every championship team I've been a part of, the offensive line has been a key. Uh, in 2016 when we won it, we had a phenomenal offensive line, and in 2024 when we or 2023, I'm sorry, we won it. Uh, Offensive line was probably the best in the state of Texas, and then this past season we finished sixth in the nation at Duncanville, and we're averaging 7.5 yards a carry in the semifinal. So. Uh, Offensive line is key. I'm kind of a different cat, and I have a background as a quarterback. So
Right.
I just, man, the line of scrimmage is so important, especially in today's world.
Yeah.
And even going back to my years as a young head coach in Iowa or being a position coach, our best teams in Iowa were the offensive line was a very strong group.
Yeah. What now, Duncanville, obviously, for those listeners that kind of maybe don't know or are sort of new to football, you guys are your own, like I mean, the own a dynasty in Texas right now, right? What's it like being involved in that program, um, just top to bottom? I mean, is it? I would have to assume it's basically like a college run program at the high school level. I mean, as far as I can imagine from the outsider looking in.
Yeah, Coach Samuels does a magnificent job. He has to manage so many things, and we're the biggest high school in the United States under one building. So 912, we have
Okay.
4,700 kids in the school.
Wow.
And but we don't have that many kids in the program. And coach wants to keep it small. That's his idea is to have a small program and to be able to manage those guys.
Hmm.
So but it's not maybe as favorable schedule wise because we're a full traditional it's called modified block. So we have athletic periods on the beginning and end every day, and then
Hmm.
it's four classes. Uh, the previous school I was at, PNG, we had true block scheduling. So we had our football players 90 minutes a day plus
Yeah.
lifting in the morning and practice. That was really the best. And that guy, he was a longtime college coach, Jeff Joseph. And I'm not throwing shade at Samp or anything like that. It's just he probably had more resources at PNG at a smaller community that
Sure.
has a little bit more football tradition as far as going back to maybe when they were building the schedule. You know, Duncanville's been a great basketball program. They call it the City of Champions, and football has joined that talk. But before it was basketball. That's what ruled the roost there.
Oh wow. I didn't realize that. See, I'm one of those outsiders. I see Duncanville on social media over the last, 5, 6, 7 years, just cruising and so I didn't realize they were a basketball power for as long
They've
as they
won, I
were.
think, three, I maybe even four women's national championships. They were the team of the decade once. I mean, they're
Wow.
unbelievable.
That's cool. Um, you kind of talked about, you just alluded to it a little bit. My first real question. You're when I have you guys reach out, or when I reach out to you guys and have you fill out your bio, the first thing you put on yours was a football gypsy, which made me laugh a little bit because I'm kind of the same way. But you've coached or played in 9 states, and you were a head coach in Iowa as well, and
Like
went to
yourself.
college and went yeah like me and went to college in Iowa. Is that so? I guess I don't want to get I don't you don't have to give me the whole story, but are you from Iowa? Is that where you kind of got started? And so kind of give me the origin story a little bit then.
Yeah. I was born and raised in the Chicagoland area and grew up an I formation quarterback at Warren Township, which is also like Duncanville, one of the biggest schools in the country.
Hmm.
And I was obsessed with, and I'm a Packers fan, a diehard Packers fan, but I loved Jim Kelly and the Buffalo Bills as a little boy, and I loved uh, Charlie Ward and the Florida State Seminoles. So I was hell bent on learning the spread because in the late '90s, early 2000s, the spread was just starting and it hadn't made its way. I think at that time only Riverside Brookfield with Tim
Yeah,
Brasic was running it. Played at Illinois. I think Otto Zeman was the coach there.
the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, which is kind of funny as a young assistant coach. We used to take our 7-on-7 team from Cedar Rapids Wash under Tony Lombardi to play at the Riverside Brookfield 7-on-7. But regardless, so
Yeah,
the desire to learn the passing game uh, took me all over. And I was a junior college gypsy because I was such a knucklehead. I went and I played in a traditional spread at first at Dodge City. Then I went to Pima in Tucson, Arizona, ran the run and shoot. So I'm throwing the ball to my left. I'm dropping back left-handed and then flipping my hips at the top of the drop. That was wild. Then I went to Independence before Coach Brown.
sure.
I actually smoked a cigar with him once
Did you really?
at AFCA in Nashville, not Nashville, in San Antonio. But anyway,
Oh wow.
regardless. So then I went played in the West Coast, and then so that's not taking me to Kansas, taking me to Arizona, taking me to and I went to North Dakota State College of Science, and then finished up at uh, with the Mount Union folks, Coach Eric Rayburn, and then later Steve Staker. So,
Okay.
and then from there, sheesh, became a coach in Iowa, then went to Texas, Michigan for a little bit, back to Texas. So I've been all over. Just I don't have any hobbies. I don't golf. I don't fish.
Yeah.
I read football books. I think Sunday I watched the entire 8 series of the SEC, and it was 90 minutes a pop. My wife was pulling her hair out like, "What the hell are you doing? It's Sunday.
Yeah.
Let's do something."
Hey,
But
I tell you what, you and I are very similar in that. Like my wife yells at me all the time. Like I'm not good at, I'm not a fix-it guy. I'm like you. I don't have a lot of hobbies. I like to read football books. I see your collection behind you is pretty good. Probably a lot. If you and I compared book collections, I would say there's probably going to be a lot similar. I see right underneath that Purple Panthers helmet. It looks like Winning Edge by Bill Walsh. So
oh yeah,
that's an impressive one. I got that one too. But
it's funny thing about that book is it was on like NFL Network, like $700, $800, and everyone's
mhm,
talking about it, can't find it. And then the guy who actually runs Coach's Choice always has had a booth at the AFCA convention,
yeah,
and he was selling it to coaches for $50. So me and my buddy who's on the committee with AFCA, we thought we scored the greatest thing ever. And the guy,
yeah,
we each bought one. And my buddy bought 2 or 3 for a couple of the coaches, and he's like, "You're not going to sell these, are you?" I'm like, "Coach, we're just trying
yeah.
to give the other coaches who don't have this opportunity." The guy I work for at P&G, he has a signed one from
Really?
Walsh.
Wow. That's one of the things. I don't know if that's kind of what your background was growing up, or if you were like a voracious reader, but that was something my folks instilled with me. So I like books. My dad, if I ever need a book, I just put on Twitter the other day, he found me that Tubby Raymond book. If there's ever something I can't find, he's like a bloodhound. He'll find that thing in 10 minutes for fraction of the cost.
Yeah.
So
I'm probably the antithesis of that. I was never really asked to do much academically, hence why I had to go to junior college.
hey, it's all right. It's
Late
all
bloomer.
right. Hey, what's A's and B's are nice, but C's will get you degrees. That's all that matters. If as long as you finished up somehow and somewhere, that's all that matters. I gotta ask though, I do have to go back. When did you graduate high school? I feel like you and I are very similar in age.
I'm '02, so I'm
Okay.
41.
So I'm 44, so I'm 99. So we're not that far off.
My wife is graduated class in '99, so same.
Okay. Yeah, so we're not too far off. So we grew up watching the same football. I mean, the football I remember watching growing up was I was a big you talk about you were a spread guy. I loved watching Nebraska. I loved watching, that I formation role and I'm an offensive lineman. That makes a lot more sense watching those guys roll and actually a funny story, my freshman year of college, I went to Augustana my freshman year in Rock Island
Oh yeah.
and one of the guys on my team was a quarterback from oh shoot, Monmouth Warren. So ironic Warren, but Monmouth Warren. He was a triple option guy, and he was a huge Nebraska fan. So he had like the highlight tapes from
He's saying Monmouth
91.
of Warren County, I believe, right?
Yes, that's what it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
but he had the highlight tapes from the early 90s all the way up. And so, I mean, I used to borrow those tapes and watch those religiously, because it was so fun to watch that stuff.
So two things that's it brings my number one, I couldn't stand those teams, and I became because I love Florida State. That was my team,
Yeah.
uh, but then Tom Osborne spoke at my first ever AFCA, and
Hmm.
I was like, this is the most outstanding human being I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
And then later on, like the FCA breakfast that Bobby Bowden spoke. So like, oh my God, like there's two salt of the earth guys. But just like your love of watching that, I bought my
Hmm.
dad the VHS. I think I bought it at TJ Maxx, the history of the Super Bowls, and it was like. At that point, I want to say that the Bills and the Redskins were the last on that VHS, and I would watch
Okay.
that thing relentlessly. I mean, so I mean, Weeby, not Weeby Banka, but Hank Schramm and
Hmm.
all those guys, and just that's really where my love came from. So
Yeah, and but it's such a cool I mean, I still love that stuff. I mean, I'm assuming you're still the same way where I mean, I bought going back a little bit to books. I bought a couple months ago like the history of the slot T and like running the wishbone from a high school offense, books that were from like the 1950s. Um because I'm like you, I want to find one little bit of knowledge. I want to find one thing I can take to give whoever I'm coaching a leg up on the opposition. I mean, that's the beauty of that's what I love the sport. That's why I love honestly. That's why I spend so much more time. We joked about it today on Twitter, because there's just so much good stuff. There's so much good content on there, and finding little things, little nuggets of knowledge is so much fun for me.
I couldn't agree with you more. I don't know if you can see that a spiral book right over my left hand shoulder. That's the uh, what is it? About Lou Holtz,
Okay,
the offensive side of Lou Holtz.
yeah,
You can't get that book anywhere. So I got it as an interlibrary loan from the state of Arkansas.
okay,
And I'm probably gonna get, I photocopied every page of it and had the gal down at Kinko's bind it for me. So
wow,
there's so many good things there just about leadership and pillars of a program and
mm-hmm,
ball handling and the option. But there's many books by Don Shula and you know
mm-hmm,
I know controversial character, but Joe Paterno, old books that have just great ideas. Vince Lombardi. So there's tons of stuff out there that I think those guys, those pioneers of football, there was no YouTube, there was no,
right,
there was one or two coaching clinics a year, and guys are in suits all day, driving all over the country to get there. So they really had to spend a lot more time than we do, and I
right,
think that their techniques have lasted this time, and we, like, as an offensive line coach, we shoulder block still. I know that's not really popular anymore, but that's old school mentality, and that's I think so many of those things. In reality, like I said, I watched that SEC program the other day, and they're talking about um, the single wing back with
mm-hmm,
what was it, General Nealand, and the old man talking was a center on that team. They're talking about Spurrier, and then they fast forward to Cam Newton, Tim Tebow, and they got old man. This is a class of '52. He
yeah,
goes to Tennessee. Says that's the same exact stuff we were doing then. And
right,
I've been married twice. My first wife, her father was a quarterback, a spinner back quarterback at West Waterloo in the single wing.
oh
So
wow,
I think that stuff, that stuff is just fun to me. I love the history of football.
yeah,
I've never ran the single wing, but I've spent a lot of time on the phone with Rick Darlington trying to learn about it, and
yeah,
he's as good as it gets down there in DeLand, Florida now, formerly of
yeah,
Apopka. So there's just so many cool things about football. Like I love all those offenses, and I think, like you said, there's something you could pull just to give you an advantage, just to have a little bit of knowledge. And so much what we do offensively is based on what the defense does. And I remember at PNG my receiver coach looked at me like, well, how the hell do you know that? Just talking about defense.
mm-hmm,
I just spend so much time on the defensive side also. When I go to clinics, that's all I do. I don't even go to offensive people.
right,
I go directly to people when I want to talk about offense, but I'll go to defense clinics and just sit on defensive guys' talks the whole time and just try to soak as much of that knowledge as see how they're defending stuff and
right.
to to exploit it in our scheme.
Right. But again, that's I think that's what really good coaches do. Is you know, I'm an offensive line guy by trade. I'm like you. If I go to a clinic, I don't want to listen to offensive line guys. Like, and that's not a. I don't mean that to sound arrogant or
No.
cocky or anything, but I want to learn other stuff. I want to learn about the passing game. Like you, I want to go listen to someone running a 3-3 defense and how the things that gives them issues or the things that they're trying to do because I'm an offensive minded guy. I want to attack it. I want to learn how to beat it. And so, I can't do that listening to the same coach talk about inside zone for the 55th time. That's not going to help whatever program I'm with. And so it's always about learning. It's always about growth. I've always said if I, the day I wake up and don't want to read or learn or look at something about football is the day that I need to stop coaching football, I guess. And so it's there's always something out there like we've talked about. There's always something new for coaches to get, for coaches to learn. And that's the beauty of the game, I think. I was just talking to somebody else about that. You don't see that about you don't see a lot of stuff like that on basketball or baseball or ice hockey on social media. It's all a lot of football stuff.
I couldn't agree. Maybe we don't follow it, but
Well,
I
that's
mean,
gonna be it too,
having
yeah.
coached, you're up north, and I cut my teeth. My first 7 years of my career were in Iowa. You coach all three sports. You coach football, you coach basketball, you coach
Hmm.
baseball, and hell, in football, you coach both sides of the ball. So, but and Twitter was in its infancy, but there's not a whole lot of scheme stuff. I mean, and even going to those clinics
Right.
in both those sports, they're not the same. It's not the same kind of. Those guys are a lot more guarded. They don't share stuff. Football
Sure.
coaches. I wrote an article for AFCA 2 years ago, and I thought I had all the damn answers. And I called Larry Zerline, one of my mentors. He's coach for the Steelers and Browns and Cardinals, and I'm like, well, Coach, I just don't want to share how we do it. And he goes, well, then don't write the bleeping article.
Right.
I go, what? He
Right.
goes, that's your responsibility is to share stuff.
Yeah.
You don't have the right to not share because somebody helped you and you better. So I think that's what our profession is as different as it can be that the coaches are more willing to share and more willing to help each other
Hmm.
and really give each other the opportunity to get better.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. No doubt. No doubt. Again, it's such a great fraternity, I think. It's the being a football coach, especially now, it's such a great um it's such a great profession, in my opinion. I don't know. I love it. I think that's fantastic. Not to get too off subject, but being able to talk to guys like you and being able to reach out on Twitter to whoever is so you couldn't do that with other sports. And so to me, it's just
you mentioned the
such a
three
cool
three
thing.
stack earlier. One of my old hell my father my stepdad's friend was a coach in Donaldson, Iowa, not far from Fort Madison where
Yep.
you were at, and he was
Yeah.
running 3-3 stack, and it was okay what he was teaching me. I'm like, where did you learn it? He said, well, Steve Specht out of St. Xavier High School, Cincinnati. So I call Steve Specht, and I drive to Cincinnati 9 hours from Cedar
Hmm.
Rapids, Iowa, or whatever it was, 7 hours, learn his defense, spend 3 days there. And he's showing me video, and he's like, "This is the adjuster," which he's really the father of all this Iowa State with John Heacock, whatever the DC at Iowa State is running, and
Oh yeah,
then
yeah. The three safety stuff.
yeah, that's all comes from Specht at St. Xavier. But he's showing me videos, and at the time it was Luke Kuechly was his video safety, and the next guy was a guy I really haven't been heard of, but Justin Hilliard, who was the number one linebacker in the nation. I want to say 2013, 2014. He
Hmm.
never did. He got hurt at Ohio State, never did much. But that's the great thing about football is you can just call a guy up in another state. Like one
Yeah.
of the guys I learned from, one of my great friends, Juju Scott at Kerrville Tivy, who was Johnny Manziel's OC. He was really loved to go learn from those De La Salle guys in Concord, California. And
Oh, okay.
they'd open their arms and they'd let him come out there for free and ask a million questions and this and that and the other. And you know that's just the great thing about this sport is we're willing to share. And I know again we're getting off topic, but
Yeah. No, it is. It's great. It's so great. But okay, let's go. Let's veer back a little bit. So now you kind of talked about you're a spread guy. You're a you passing guy and run and shoot and all this kind of stuff. Now that you're coaching the offensive line, do you find yourself kind of gearing more towards those? Because the world of offensive line is it's all about duo and counter and power and all that stuff. Do you find yourself kind of looking at that stuff more, or are you still a spread guy through and through?
No, I mean, so at Duncanville this past year, we were multiple personnel, 21P, 11P, 10P, inside zone, GH counter, pin and pull, outside zone. And so in that just this past year, I didn't call plays. So I'd merely just looked at as offensive line play.
Right.
And Duncanville had their passing game they had done. But in previous years at PNG, we were very multiple. And meaning we were 10P, 11P, 12P, 21P, 32P. We had a goal line set.
Hmm.
So I have kind of I was talking the other day with somebody that I look at the game through the eye of the quarterback, but the lens of the offensive line. I know that sounds
Okay.
very
No, no,
cliche,
that makes sense. But that makes sense though.
but so I always want to make the offensive line's life the easiest
Hmm.
because they have the hardest job. You have the most people on the field of any position group that have to communicate, identify, and then go execute. Everybody else, the most, D linemen or receivers, there's maybe four.
Hmm.
DBs, there's four. And those are all such hinged parts that they don't have to tie together necessarily. They do in the grand scheme of things, but they're not like right next to one another with an
Right.
immediate impact. So I've always tried to make the job of the offensive line the easiest, but taking some of that pressure off with the quarterback. Like I've never been a fan, and I know the NFL guys have to do it, and I don't like uh, dual read 5-man pros. I don't want my tackle dual reading a will linebacker and an end. And
Right.
people were like, well, you have to do that. Like, no, bullshit. I don't have to do that.
Right.
I teach my quarterback who he's responsible for. If that guy comes, you have to throw the ball now to this guy. I
Right.
think that's much more. And I think when you think about that as a play caller, I just find it to be more successful because the offensive line is so difficult, especially what we see today. And we see so many things that we didn't see on video in preparation. So we'll prepare for X and then Z comes out and we got to be able to adapt. So I
Hmm.
think when you're always gearing everything towards the offensive line, and I wouldn't say I'm a spread guy, I would say I'm probably more of a power uh, eye guy because that's really where my roots of football are. I love the passing game as a quarterback, and I went down that road early. They referred to me as Air Coryell as a young head coach. I used to chuck and duck, and we set
Yeah.
a bunch of records in Iowa. But that's great. But we didn't win any championships, and
Right.
I just believe the physicality of football. So when you live in that world of offensive line play, and you're looking for angles and where you can dominate people, that's where I look at football now. And there was a time in the third round of the playoffs in 2022, we were kind of coming out soft, playing at NRG Stadium in Houston, and I got into our goal line offense middle of the field. And from that point on, there was never a time where I didn't care if we had a lot of 10P in our game plan or a lot of 11. If I thought we weren't being physical enough,
Hmm.
I would get in that goal line offense midfield and just pound it
Yeah.
until we decided we want to play big boy ball. So, but
Yeah.
we had the kids that could do it. If we were, uh,
Right.
small town, like you said, Warren High School out there in Western Illinois, we probably couldn't do that. So,
Right. No, again, I think it's we as coaches, we always adapt, right? Like I remember I've told the story a couple times, but in 2016 or 17, I remember I very arrogantly said I would never run another offensive play from under center. I'm gonna be shotgun through and through all the way, blah blah blah. And then, we as coaches we adapt. In 2023, I got under center and really started to kind of take another deep dive into some things and just absolutely I think if I were to call an offense right now, I would be 60-40 under center. Because there's just so much more fun stuff. But that's part of the game. That's part of learning and adapting and rolling with it. I think um there's always, like you said, you always have to have adaptations. You always have to have answers to whatever the defense is giving you. And that's the fun stuff. That's the Monday through Thursday fun stuff where you get to now go and really have fun on Friday with it. So, important parts of the game, no,
let's you, you
all of it.
listen to Saban speak about the losing to Michigan in 2023.
Hmm.
And he said the defensive backs couldn't find the receivers and tight ends because they weren't used to seeing teams come out of a huddle.
Right.
That's the pendulum of football is swinging
Right.
back that way. That's what I always kind of tease people. I would love to go down to the Valley, which is South Texas, Region 4, and run split back veer.
Yeah.
And with tough kids down there and just cut the piss out of everybody
Yeah.
and just go be violent and nasty. That would just be so much fun. But
Yeah. It would. It would. It's yeah, there's a little bit of freedom with being able to kind of have that ability to do that. It's a very fun feeling to kind of know like, hey, here's what we're gonna do, and we're gonna be really good at it. And so that's again, I always talk about the fun part of the game, but that really is the best part of it is being able to do that stuff. Um, I gotta ask, because again, it's in your Twitter bio. You're a proud Packers owner. Um, why do you have to torment us out here? Why do you have to? Are you one of those guys you own a share, or do you own are you a bigwig? Do you own like the 1% or something?
no, I'm a dumbass and I have two shares.
Two shares. There you go.
So we the public offering came back up. I don't know what year it was.
Yeah.
It was springtime and we had freshman practice. So I run into the field house and I'm like, "You're gonna have to do this, dude. I'm gonna go in here and I'm bidding. I'm making sure I get my order." So I actually ordered two.
Yeah.
So I have on my wall right here
Yeah.
underneath a painting of the Buck sweep,
Oh,
backward
nice.
sweep. But why am I a Packers fan? I think
Yeah.
uh,
Because you're from Bears country. I mean,
yeah.
like, and
Well,
and
I mean,
you're
so number one, I didn't have cable as a kid. We had an antenna, and you could get all the Milwaukee stations and Chicago stations. So
okay.
if both teams were playing at noon, you could watch the pack. Not to mention, as a quarterback, as a kid growing up,
True.
the Bears, besides every couple of years of they could be non-dysfunctional and just the Mike Brown return touchdowns and of '01 were few
Yeah.
and far between. Hester in '06, but consistency is something you look for as a fan, and that's what you had in Brett Favre is he didn't miss a game for 160, 170 games in a regular season, which I'd put that up against Gehrig and Cal Ripken any day because
Yeah.
it's a much more violent game. So, and that was just fun to watch. I loved, and then you got to know. At that time, you had Madden calling the games with Summerall and you had Holmgren and Andy Reid on the sideline, and you got
hmm
to know Mooch, and hell, you didn't
Yeah.
even know Gruden existed, but he was there, and it's just like as that, and then also I got to work with a guy out of Wisconsin called Jeff, named Jeff Trickey. He's a
Oh,
Waukesha
yeah.
guy,
Yeah.
so I traveled this country with those guys doing quarterback camps, and just solidified my love of the pack. And then one of my dearest friends here in Texas, Steve Almute, who's the head coach down at Hillsboro. When I got to Texas in 16 at Mineola, he was a big Pack fan. So we'd watch every Packers game on Sundays. So it's
Yeah.
just, and my wife was just in Yellowstone with her on her side of the family. And there was a Packers bar in West Yellowstone. So it's kind of like the Steelers or the Cowboys.
Yeah.
There's going to be fans everywhere. I get it. I'm a Chicagoan. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm the only White Sox fan in my entire family. Everybody else is Cubs fans.
Okay.
I do like the Cubs too. I love the Brewers as well, but uh, I'm still a White Sox fan at heart. But I don't know. Maybe I like to be different. I like to just be the guy that
Hey,
needles everybody.
I'm the same way. Obviously, I'm a Bears fan. My wife's a Packers fan, but my father is a Sox fan, so I am a Sox fan. But also, I like the Cubs. I don't care. But it's baseball, so I really don't care. And growing up, I'm the same as you. Like growing up, I was always a Bears fan, but the Packers just always had characters, and I liked watching Favre play, with the exception of, the two times a year they played the Bears, but I liked watching Favre. I liked Reggie White. I liked Leroy Butler. So I get it. It's to me it's been it's more of a needle in my wife's side to be a Bears fan because her whole family loves the Packers. And so I've got to, I gotta be different a little bit and hope for the best. But no, it's fun. I'm sure that's fun. It's being Lambeau Field is still one of the great stadiums in the world. I've never gotten to see a game there. I got to go there twice in college. For when we were going up to play St. Norbert, I got to go see the field, so that was cool. But it would kind of one of those bucket list things. Would love to try to get to a game there at some point, just because it is such a mecca, I guess if you want to call it that.
Oh, absolutely, it is. I
Yeah.
think there's not a better stadium, and I coached games at AT&T and NRG. I would. There's nothing better than Lambeau on a Sunday, if you ask me.
Yeah. Well, we'll hopefully the Bears can beat them twice this year, but we'll see. I'm not holding my breath. So, last question I got for you, and I give this one to everybody. If you could build a Mount Rushmore of offensive linemen from guys you have played with, guys you've coached, or guys that maybe you were just a fan of watching football growing up, who would be on that five man offensive line?
Oofed. Uh, I'll stick with pros so I don't piss anybody
Okay.
off.
Okay, that's fine. That's all right.
Uh, so as a kid, I really enjoyed Bruce Matthews would
Hmm.
be number one because of his versatility. He could
Yeah.
play all three positions. I think he was an All Pro and a Pro Bowler at center guard and tackle.
Yeah.
At that level is just insane. Um, so I would put Bruce Matthews and then Larry Allen as my other guard. Um, my
You got to put Larry Allen on there. I mean,
yeah,
he's
massive Larry.
especially yeah, especially from being with you being in Texas now, like he's got to be on there. He was such a force at offensive line.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Uh, Definitely love Joe Thomas. Big fan of him. Unfortunately, never got to go to the postseason, but just and I always liked him, but then one day I sat down with George DeLeon, who has passed away, but he was over at Baylor at the time, and
Hmm.
we watched practice cut ups all day one day, about 6 hours, and
Yeah.
it was tons of Browns film when he was the OC or the O-line coach of the Browns. So I love Joe Thomas. On the other side, because I did coach against this kid. He was in our district, Tristan Wirfs, when he was at Mount
Oh,
Vernon High
oh,
School.
okay. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
Tristan Wirfs, uh, I think the world of Tristan Wirfs super. I mean, he was the Drake Relays Amateur Athlete of the Year, which if you people who are watching this are not familiar with the Drake Relays, it is one of the best. Besides Texas Relays, Penn Relays, Drake Relays, those were the three
Hmm.
best for our amateur athletes. Well, they also have a pro side, and a lot of those amateur athletes are going to go be Olympians, so they're
Hmm.
collegiate, right? He was a high school boy, and he threw the shot over 60, and I maybe lying here. I want to say he threw the discus over 200 foot. And at
Yeah.
the time, the Iowa Hawkeyes had him and Epineza. AJ Epineza is also a world-class discus thrower. But anyway, and then, geez, my center. Uh, I don't know who my center would be. I'll probably say my man from P&G, Bryce Lofton. I'll give one high school kid there.
There you go.
So there's my center.
There you go.
He's now going to be a coach for P&G, so that's pretty cool to see. But
Oh,
uh,
that is cool. Yeah. No, that's a good list. I remember, and Werfs, I remember watching because again, I think I was down there around the same time, or maybe had just gotten to Iowa, when he was kind of blowing up. But I remember watching his wrestling clips. I remember seeing some people post clips of him from wrestling, and it's like, holy, like this guy. First of all, he didn't look like a heavyweight wrestler. He looked like a 220 pounder.
mhm.
And then you kind of start to read about him, oh, he's a world class track athlete. Oh, he's going to Iowa on a football scholarship. Oh, he's the best tackle in college football, and now one of the best in the pros. So it's kind of cool to watch that growth from him. And that's just he's just another prime example of kids play multiple sports, right? Don't don't
And then
don't
the
focus on one
Linderbaum
thing.
kid, who's just the next town south of Mount Vernon, is Solon, Iowa, and that's where Tyler Linderbaum from, and they're about the same age. Maybe I'm wrong on that.
I got to coach against Tyler.
Yeah.
So my first year at Fort Madison was his senior year at Solon.
Mhm.
And he just absolutely killed it. Like he
State
was the
champion
nose
wrestler as
guard.
well.
Yeah, he was the nose guard. He was he's 6'2", 6'3". He was probably about 260, 265. And just I mean, he was far and away the best player in that conference.
Well, no doubt.
Yeah, such a stud. But well, Coach, I appreciate you coming on. Before we get you out of here, do me a favor, drop your Twitter handle and any other information you need the listeners to know.
Yeah. If you ever need to talk football, you reach out to me. My cell phone is 830-377-3955. Twitter is at Coach Felly, so at COACH, F as in Frank, ELLY. Some guy in New York will not give up Coach Feller, but
Oh man.
I had to have a why. But anyways, that's all. You get a hold of me. I got nothing to hide. You mentioned Solon, Iowa, Kevin Miller there. He gave me
Mm-hmm.
a lot of his time as well. So, uh, and the guy was right next town over from us at North Cedar. So
Yeah.
always willing to share and help whatever y'all need. And thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. It was great talking with you. And again, you and I'm gonna reach out some more because you and I have a lot of we got a lot in common, a lot of similarities. So I'm gonna start bothering you about football a lot more than before.
Yes, sir.
All right, cool, man. Well, I appreciate you. Best of luck this season and looking forward to talking with you.
Thank you.
All right, man.